Hi everyone, it's William. I'm finally back with a new video for the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary series. The acoustics are a little different in this building where I'm at the moment. I'm staying at a friend's guest house just in a suburb of Paris called Issy-les-Moulineaux, and which is never mentioned in Dmitri's diaries, unfortunately. I don't know if he ever got out this way. So yeah, we are up to part 4 of the long diary entry of the 30th of April, 1921. I am really sort of muddle-headed with jet lag. I just had a hard time sleeping last night. It was a long day of traveling from Portland to Seattle and then to Paris. Luckily, a direct flight from Seattle to Paris, but I thought I would go ahead and try to do one. It's not a terribly complicated one, so we have basically 3 parts left of the long diary entry, and this one, part 4, is about returning to the subject of the strikes, the coal miners' strike in England in April 1921. And this and what was going on with General Wrangel and his desire to stay with his troops in Constantinople in the former Ottoman Empire, and the French government's unwillingness to continue to support that, and the new Turkish government's unwillingness to have him there. These are things that are very much preoccupying Dmitri at this particular time. But we will be able to get through those quickly. So today the miners' strike, and tomorrow, well, if I'm able to do one tomorrow, but the next video about Wrangel, all very interesting material. You may think, well, I've heard him talk about these things before, but he always has something different to say. And yeah, anyway, here we go for our recap for part 3 of this long diary entry. Maria had organized a charity bazaar, and she was very excited about that, also anxious, I think. And Dmitri just remarked that he hadn't received any news about what was going on inside Russia. As you know, before he went off to Denmark and Berlin and had his bad experience there, he was very intent on information gathering about what was going on in Russia itself. And now he tells us that he hasn't had any news, and he hasn't approached anybody to find out what the latest news is. Okay, so here we go. I mentioned in my previous entries the disorders that are happening in London. The matter has taken a rather nasty turn. The coal strike continues, and apparently there is no end in sight. Since England and London live primarily on coal, all aspects of daily existence in England suffer from the reduced production. Unemployment is growing at a terrifying rate, thanks to the fact that the factories have had to close their doors due to lack of fuel. Beyond that, every day one reads about extremely energetic measures taken to reduce railway traffic. And then, of course, the percentage of dissatisfied people, and that element that would be ready to do anything on the slightest pretext, grows in direct proportion to the ballooning unemployment. Very often one is forced to hear from English people themselves the opinion that it would be better if the matter were to come to open rebellion on the part of the workers now, because the troops are ready to move against them, and the recruitment of reservists and volunteers has gone so well that it shows the anti-revolutionary sentiment which prevails en large among the English people. It's ironic that the optimists are saying the same thing as those who look with gloom and horror at the overall situation. But the opinion of the pessimists is based on the belief that the government would never succeed in a second attempt to call up the reservists and volunteers with the same success as it is seen now, and so it's better to come to blows while you have something to hit with. All those arriving from London are full of stories about how terribly unpleasant life is in London just now, and how they're all living on top of a volcano. Okay, so apparently there were people that Dmitri knew in London who were going to France to get at least temporarily, away from all of the disruption in people's life that was going on there. So that makes sense. I just have done very cursory research on this, really cursory. And so I'm just going to quote the first thing that came up online, the first AI thing that came up when I was looking for a summary of what was going on. So on 31st March 1921, the coal mines were returned to private ownership. The miners' union refused to accept the owners' new terms, and on 1st April 1921, 1 million British miners were locked out. The lockout lasted for 3 months, with the miners returning to work in early July 1921. So we're kind of, we're still actually, pretty early. Not yet midway through, I guess. So last time Dmitri brought up the miners' strike, we talked about Black Friday, the day when the other unions decided that they weren't going to support the coal miners union and make it a huge general strike. That was on 15th April, so we're past that. And, you know, unlike us, Dmitri and his English friends don't know how it's going to come out. And of course, the concern for the Russian refugees who were looking on at this sort of thing was always that it was not just economic, but was revolutionary in nature. I should add too, from the quote, when the quote says the coal mines were returned to private ownership, that means after the war. So during the war, the coal mines had been requisitioned by the government, I gather. And when they were returned to private ownership and economically things weren't good, the owners were not going to continue the salaries that, or the wages that the coal miners had been receiving by the government during the war. So that caused the strike and the lockout. And yeah, you know, we're how many years away? We're 8 years away now from, was it also called Black Friday in the US in 1921 when the stock market, or 1929 when the stock market crashed? And it looks like, you know, things are already not going great economically in England. This high unemployment rate, a lot of unrest, it sounds like. I don't think they were ever as close to having a revolution as Dmitri feared. And at some moments, as you know, actually wished that that the British government and that arrogant people in England would have to experience what it was like to go through a revolution, or at least to be scared to death that a revolution was starting to happen. But yeah, he is clearly on the side of the government, and that doesn't surprise me. And the friends that he's hearing from about how hard life is at the moment in England because the railway travel is disrupted, everything is disrupted. Well, you know, these were obviously upper class and aristocratic people. And he did have lots of English friends, more English friends than French friends, for sure. He'd spent 1919 and 1920 in England. And it was always, as I've mentioned in the past, it was always kind of his safe place that he could go back to if things didn't work out in other places. Yeah, so this fear of revolution would just haunt all the emigres for the rest of their lives, and in some instances for generations to come. That was such a huge trauma of the Bolshevik Revolution that, you know, even a strike, granted a substantial strike, would make them fear that that the next step would be a revolution and things would just be swept away. And so, you know, people have argued that fascism was a reaction to Bolshevism, to the trauma and the terror that had been caused by the Russian Revolution. And certainly, you know, fascism, not by that name, I believe, but you know, right-wing extreme political groups and ideology had existed long before the Bolshevik Revolution. But certainly I would say the Bolshevik Revolution was a catalyst to the fascist, the growth of fascism in Europe. Yeah, okay. So he writes in English, it's better to come to blows while you have something to hit with. He doesn't put that in quotes, but I would guess that he'd heard that either from one of his friends or in a newspaper or something. Yeah, and next time we have more about the ongoing saga of Wrangel, which is very important to Dmitri and the other emigres. And then in the next video after that, we have some very, very important and personal commentary on Dmitri's part in relation to where he is post-Rasputin, how he's processing his involvement in that whole thing. So some of the most important text in the diary about his the aftermath of that on him, even as late as 1921. So I may not be in France next time I see you. I may be doing the next one from Chateau, which would be, yeah, I will be there. Let's see, today is Friday. I will be there next Tuesday, I believe. So there could be a bit of an interruption because I don't know between now and then if I'll have time to do any more videos. I will if I can, either in Paris or in Zurich. Otherwise, I will be talking to you from Schatz Alp. All right. Hope to see you next time. Bye.